Hello, friends. Shirin, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, friends, today we are going to deal with yet another session on the, and today we are going to deal with the important topic, which is a very, very important subject, a very, very important chapter of the entire CGST rules, because it deals with the situation in which there is a, let's say, a possibility of getting a refund either due to the accumulation of the credit or due to the excess payment of tax or because I have indulged into the export of goods or services. So there are lots and lots of such situations which are contemplated and provided in the statute, which gives the assessee or the taxpayer an opportunity of claiming a refund. Why I was saying that this is the most important or one of the most important topics, reason being, whenever we land into a situation that the tax has been paid extra or we have incurred certain expenditure on which we have paid the taxes which otherwise was not payable, or we have indulged into some activities which the government says that whatever tax you will pay will be refunded to you. In all these situations, the refund becomes an important aspect, a very, very important aspect. And therefore, I always say that this is something which we all should be carefully reading, because it leads to not only providing a compliance service to the client, but also it helps the client to get his money back, which was deposited with the government treasury and which he is eligible to claim back. So as a professional, we can provide wonderful services so far as the refund is concerned. Let me share the screen. I hope this screen is visible. And
हाँ सर, स्क्रीन विजिबल है.
okay. So now let us begin with the topic of the day. Summary I'll be avoiding now. It starts from Rule 89. Rule 89 provides for application for refund of tax, interest, penalty, fees, or any other amount. So, just a moment. Application for refund of tax, interest, penalty, fees, or any other amount. So, you have to make an application. Now, there are two situations provided in the law. One is which is applicable in majority of the cases, that you have to make an application. That application needs to be processed. Once the processing is done and the officer is satisfied, he will adjudicate and sanction the refund. That is the process number one. And second process is wherein the adjudication is not required, it automatically gets refunded to you. But that happens in a very, very limited circumstance. We'll be dealing with all those things when it happens, when it does not happen, or what are the requirements of the law. Because we are reading the procedural part, we are not into the substantive law part, because substantive law deals in section 54. Section 54 has to be read with these rules. And section 54 says that, yes, in this situation, the cash refund will be allowed to you. Let's say section 54, subsection 3, it says unutilized accumulated credit will be refunded to the taxpayer in case of exports without payment of tax. But how it has to be calculated, which formula has to be applied, that is specified and prescribed in the rules. And it starts with rule 89 to rule 97. Now, 89 sub rule 1. Now, this is a series wherein we are required to read clause by clause, and therefore my endeavor today, again, I'm re-specifying this because there may be a few new participants also. My endeavor today would be to read clause by clause. It may not be in very much technical details, but yes, the important aspects will be certainly covering today. It says any person except the persons covered under notification issued under section 55 claiming refund of any tax, interest, penalty, fees, or any other amount paid by him other than refund of integrated tax paid on goods exported out of India may file an application. So it itself gives an exception, which I was talking about. It says, whenever you are covered in section 55, you are not required to come here. But barring that section 55, you want to claim the refund of tax, interest, levy, penalty, etc., except the situation wherein you have paid IGST at the time of exports, you are supposed to file. That means it covers all the situation except this, that is export with payment of IGST. You are supposed to file an application electronically in form GST RFD 01 through the common portal, either directly or through a facilitation center notified by the commissioner. So this is what is specified in the main sub-rule. Provided that any claim for refund relating to balance in the electronic cash ledger in accordance with the provisions of subsection 6 of section 49 may be made through the return furnished for the relevant tax period in form GSTR 3 or form GSTR 4 or form GSTR 7 as the case may be. Now see the preparedness of the government. Originally, they started with GSTR 3. Then because of certain technical glitches or maybe whatever the reason was, they shifted to GSTR 3B. They said that GSTR 3B is a temporary arrangement that they are doing. It is not the permanent arrangement. Then finally, it was challenged that 3B is not a return. Then they have rectified and amended the rule. After the amendment of the rule, now they have amended it again because there was again a lacuna because they have amended 61.5, wherein they were supposed to amend 61.1. So now they have from 1st January 2021, they have amended 61.1. Now they are saying that GSTR 3B is a return under section 39. Otherwise, till 31st December 2021, they were saying that in case of the extension of the dates for GSTR 1, you can file a summary return in GSTR 3B, and then they were saying that GSTR 3B will, in that situation, will be deemed to be a return under section 39. Otherwise, GSTR 3 was the only return. Now they have amended rule 61.1, but they forgot to amend the rule here. And this says, and this shows the preparedness of the government, that it is a patchwork which is going on. It is not a cumulative and a exhaustive reading and try to locate the errors and then make the law complementing the other provisions also. Otherwise, when we'll read 61.1, it will say GSTR 3B. From where does GSTR 3 comes into play? Because GSTR 3 तो अब है ही नहीं. They have already deleted GSTR 3 61.1 में. तो जब GSTR 3 है ही नहीं, then why they are continuing with this in 89.1? Anyways, that was just for the sharing of my views to it. But now they are saying that if there is any excess tax paid and the balance is there in electronic cash ledger, then you can make an application of the claim of refund through the return which is furnished in GSTR 3, 4, 7 as the case may be. Now tell me whether by filing GSTR 3B, can you claim a refund of excess cash balance in the electronic cash ledger? To my limited understanding and as per my limited knowledge, the answer is no, because there is no such mechanism which is available. So finally, we'll have to go and make an application in RFD 01 only. Provided further that in respect of supplies to an SEZ or SEZ developer, the application for refund shall be filed by the A, supplier of goods after such goods have been admitted in full in the special economic zone for authorized operations as endorsed by the specified officer of the zone. B, supplier of services along with such evidence regarding receipt of services for authorized operations as endorsed by the specified officer of the zone. So it clearly says that supplier of goods and supplier of services will have to make an application for refund in case of the supplies which are made to a SEZ unit or to an SEZ developer. Further, it is provided also that in respect of supplies regarded as deemed export, the application may be filed by the recipient of deemed export supplies or the supplier of deemed export supplies in case where the recipient does not avail the input tax credit on such supplies and furnishes an undertaking to the effect that the supplier may claim the refund. Now, this is very, very important because we have to please understand the concept why refund is being claimed. Refund can be claimed in a situation wherein the tax has been paid, which otherwise was not a tax. Refund can be claimed in a situation where excess tax has been paid. And refund can be claimed in a situation wherein the exports are made. So all exports are eligible for claim of refund. Similarly, a deemed export also is eligible for claim of refund. But in this case, we'll have to bear in mind that if it is a situation of deemed exports, then either of the two can claim the refund. It can be the recipient of the export supplies or it can be the supplier. But the supplier can be made eligible only when the recipient issues an undertaking or an undertaking has been issued that the claim of refund has not been taken by the recipient and therefore the supplier may claim the refund. Otherwise, the refund will not be granted. Provided also that refund of any amount after adjusting the tax payable by the applicant out of the advance tax deposited by him under sections 27 at the time of registration shall be claimed in the last return required to be furnished by him. So it is very clear because section 27 deals with the casual taxable person and the non-resident taxable person. And therefore, we'll have to keep in mind that in that case, the requirement of the law is that when you are making an application for getting yourself registered, at that point in time, you are supposed to make the payment of tax in advance. And if your liability is excess or if your liability is extra, then in that case, you will be refunded back the amount. And if your liability is less and you have paid extra and you are required to pay the balance, then in that case, you will be made liable to pay the balance. So therefore, always bear in mind, always keep in mind that in this situation of casual taxable person or a non-resident taxable person, the refund can be claimed by filing the last return which is required under law. Moving to subsection 2, it says that how the refund application should be filed along with the documents and which all documents are required to be filed along with the refund application. The application under sub-rule 1 shall be accompanied by any of the following documentary evidence in Annexure 1 in Form GST RFD 01 as applicable to establish that a refund is due to the applicant, namely A, the reference number of the order and a copy of the order passed by the proper officer or an appellate authority or the appellate tribunal or a court resulting in such refund or reference number of the payment of the amount specified in subsection 6 of section 107, which deals with the pre-deposit, and subsection 8 of section 112, again the same, claimed as refund. So therefore, the reference number has to be there. You will have to provide it. B, a statement containing the number and date of the shipping bills or the bill of export and the number and the date of relevant export invoices in case where the refund is on account of export of goods. Whenever it is on account of goods, then the bill of export or the date of shipping bills, all those things are required. A statement containing the number and the date of invoices and the relevant bank realization certificates or foreign inward remittance certificate, as the case may be, in case where the refund is on account of export of services. So this is because services, as we all are aware, is intangible. A service being an intangible, we cannot make sure that it was really exported. And therefore, when you will read the definition of export of services, which is provided in this IGST Act, you will be able to know that there are 5 situations which are contemplated in that definition. And therefore, satisfying all those 5 situations will enable the person to claim or rather to fall into that purview of export of services. So therefore, One of those conditions is that the realization of the money, realization of the supply proceed should be in the convertible foreign exchange, and therefore the relevance of bank realization certificates or the FIRC foreign inward remittance certificates is there so as to satisfy that yes, it was a real export of services. Moving to clause D, a statement containing the number and date of invoices as provided in Rule 46, along with the evidence regarding the endorsement is specified in second proviso to sub-rule 1. In the case of supply of goods made to SEZ unit or SEZ developer. So a statement which should contain the number and the date of invoices which is provided in Rule 46, along with the evidence of endorsement as it is specified in second proviso to sub-rule 1, which we have read today, which is in case of the SEZ supplies. A statement containing the number and dates of invoices, the evidence regarding the endorsement is specified in the second proviso to sub-rule 1, and the details of payment, along with the proof thereof made by the recipient to the supplier for authorized operations as defined in SEZ Act, in a case where the refund is on account of supply of services made to a SEZ unit or an SEZ developer. So it is also dealing with the further statement or another statement which contains the number and the date of invoices and the evidence with regards to the endorsement which is specified again in the proviso to sub-rule 1, which and also the details of the payment along with the proof thereof. Clause F, a declaration to the effect that the tax has not been collected from SEZ unit or SEZ developer in a case where the refund is on account of supply of goods or services or both made to a special economic zone unit or a special economic zone developer. It is important because as we were discussing, there is a concept of unjust enrichment. No one, because if we read the Constitution also, the article, let me point out, Article 265 also says that a tax cannot be collected or no amount can be collected without the authority of law. So therefore, if something is being collected without authority of law, it tantamounts to unjust enrichment. And unjust enrichment is not allowed neither to the government, nor to the taxpayer, nor to the supplier. None of the persons can get unjust enriched on account of the taxes. So therefore, it is said that you will have to give a declaration that it has not been collected. Had it been a case that the tax has been collected from the SEZ unit, then the eligible person for refund will be SEZ unit and not the supplier. So that is the reason why such declaration is required. A statement containing the number and date of invoices along with such other evidence as may be notified in this behalf. In a case where the refund is on account of deemed exports, again, it's very clear if it is on account of deemed export, then you will have to provide the number and the dates of invoices along with the evidences as may be notified. A statement containing the number and the date of invoices received and issued during a tax period in a case where the claim pertains to refund of any unutilized input tax credit under subsection 3 of section 54, where the credit has accumulated on account of rate of tax on the inputs being higher than the rate of tax on output supplies other than nil rated or fully exempt supplies. So you will have to prepare a statement which will contain the number and the date of the invoices which you have received or which were issued during a tax period in case you are claiming the refund of the unutilized input tax credit. Moving further, the reference number of the final assessment order and a copy of the said order in a case where the refund arises on account of finalization of provisional assessment. If there is a case of provisional assessment under section 60 of the CGST Act, then in that case, you will have to attach the final assessment order in order to claim the refund of tax in case the taxes has been paid extra. A statement showing the details of transactions considered as intra-state supply, but which is subsequently held to be interstate supply. So this is section 77 read with section 19 of the CGST Act, which says that if you collect a tax as IGST whereas C and S were applicable. So in that case, you are eligible to claim refund provided you make the right payment first. So it says a statement showing the transactions considered as interstate supplies, but which is subsequently held to be an interstate supply. A statement showing the details of the amount of claim on account of excess payment of tax. So if you have made the excess payment of tax, then also the statement has to be prepared and it has to be attached along with the necessary evidences, along with the application of the refund. A declaration to the effect that the incidence of tax, interest, or any other amount claimed as refund has not been passed on to any person in a case where the amount of refund claimed does not exceed 2 lakh rupees, provided that a declaration is not required to be furnished in respect of cases covered under clause A, B, C, D, F of section 54, subsection 8. So a declaration has to be there. As I have already discussed, that unjust enrichment cannot be there. And therefore, this has been specifically stated that in all these situations, a declaration is required whenever you make an application for the purpose of refund. But yes, in certain cases, the exemption or the exception is provided wherein you are not supposed to make the application or you are not supposed to make a declaration of the unjust enrichment or that the taxes or the incidence of tax has not been passed on. A certificate in Annex 2 of Form GST RFD 01 issued by a chartered accountant or a cost accountant to the effect that the incidence of tax, interest, or any other amount claimed as a refund has not been passed on to any other person in a case where the amount of refund claimed exceeds 2 lakh rupees. So again, a certificate also has to be attached. Moving further, explanation for the purpose of this rule. In case of refunds referred to in clause C of subsection 8 of section 54, the expression invoice means invoice conforming to the provisions of section 31. 2. Where the amount of tax has been recovered from the recipient, it shall be deemed that the incidence of tax has been passed on to the ultimate customer, and therefore the eligibility of claiming refund will go away. You will not be eligible to claim the refund. Sub-rule 3. Where the application relates to refund of input tax credit, the electronic credit ledger shall be debited by the applicant by an amount equal to the refund so claimed. So therefore, whenever the refund is pertaining to input tax credit, then in that case, the electronic credit ledger will be debited to the extent of that amount for which you have filed or you are filing the refund application. Sub-rule 4. In case of zero-rated supply of goods or services or both, without payment of tax under bond or letter of undertaking in accordance with the provisions of subsection 3 of section 16 of the IGST Act, refund of input tax credit shall be granted as per the following formula. So this is applicable in a case wherein you are claiming the refund of input tax credit. It is not applicable to a situation wherein the refund is claimed of IGST refund. For that, we have a separate rule altogether. So it is a situation wherein the tax has been accumulated, you have entered into the zero-rated supply, and now you are claiming the refund of the accumulated input tax credit. So refund amount is equal to turnover of zero-rated supply of goods plus turnover of zero-rated supply of services multiplied by net ITC and divided by annual adjusted total turnover. Now, what does these term means? That is given where refund amount means the maximum refund amount that is admissible. This is the maximum which is being calculated. Then it will be referred and linked with the electronic credit ledger. And if there is a balance in electronic credit ledger to that amount, then that will be given as a refund. Otherwise, it will be restricted to the amount of balance in the electronic credit ledger for that particular tax period. Net ITC means input tax credit availed on input or input services during the relevant period other than the input tax credit availed for which refund is claimed under sub-rule 4A or 4B or both. So net ITC means the total input tax credit which is availed by a person willing to claim the refund under this rule on inputs and input services during the relevant tax period, but it will exclude the input tax credit for which a refund application is being made separately in clause 4A or clause B or both. Turnover of zero rated supply of goods means the value of zero rated supply of goods made during the relevant period without payment of tax under bond or letter of undertaking, or the value which is 1.5 times the value of like goods domestically supplied by the same or similarly placed supplier as declared by the supplier, whichever is less. Other than the turnover of supplies in respect of which turnover refund is claimed under subrules 4A or 4B or both. Now, this is a new insertion in the GST rule, and it is likely, rather, it is certainly to be tested in the eyes of the court. A court of law has to test it and then examine that whether such kind of restriction, which says that value which is 1.5 times of the value of like goods domestically supplied by the same or similarly placed supplier, whether it is practically possible in all these situations or not. But anyways, they are now trying to restrict. The purpose of having such restriction is that they are trying to restrict the turnover value of the zero rated supply of goods, because they are perceiving, they are assuming, they are believing that the overvaluation is being done by the exporters. See, I always say that you cannot punish 100 people because one or two persons are not following the law. Rather, it is said that you will have to leave 100 persons if the case arises or the situation arises, but you should not punish the one who is a innocent or a genuine person. So this is the law of the land, but they have prepared a rule wherein now they are saying that maximum value can be 1.5 times of the like goods which is domestically supplied either by the same supplier. Now, just for a food for thought, what will happen in a situation wherein I am only the exporter, I'm not supplying anything in domestic market? It will create a lot of mess. Then branding a same shirt which I am purchasing from the manufacturer at South, I can have at 200, 250 rupees. And the same shirt, when it is sold at a branded showroom, same shirt manufactured by the same manufacturer, when it is sold with the tag of a brand, it becomes 3,000 rupees. So therefore, there are a lot of things which needs to be considered. You cannot compare a normal domestic supplier with an exporter having his own brand. So therefore, I believe that this rule is not going to hold good in the eyes of law. Let's see what happens in future. It is very early to comment on such aspects. Turnover of zero rated supply of services means the value of zero rated supply of services made without payment of tax under bond or letter of undertaking calculated in the following manner, namely. Zero rated supply of services is the aggregate of the payments received during the relevant period for the zero rated supply of services and zero rated supply of services where supply has been completed for which payment has been received in advance in any period prior to the relevant period, reduced by advances received for zero rated supply of services for which supply of services has not been completed during the relevant period. So this is a simple bifurcation which is expected by the lawmakers for the purpose of calculating the turnover of zero rated supply of services for the purpose of claiming refund in case of exports being made under LUT. Adjusted total turnover means the sum total of the value of A, the turnover in the state or union territory as defined in clause 112 of section 2, excluding the turnover of services. The turnover of the zero rated supply of services determined in term of clause D above and non-zero rated supply of services. It simply means that the entire turnover, whether it is pertaining to the domestic market or whether it is pertaining to the international market, entire turnover means adjusted total turnover, excluding the value of exempt supplies other than zero rated supplies, and the turnover of supplies in respect of which refund is claimed under subrule 4A or 4B or both, if any. So that needs to be excluded from the adjusted total turnover during the relevant period. Relevant period means the period for which claim has been filed. So that is the limited tax period. It can be monthly, quarterly, annually, whatsoever. 4A. In the case of supplies received on which the supplier has availed the benefit of the Government of India, Ministry of Finance notification number 48/2017, dated 18th October 2017, published in the official gazette, refund of input tax credit availed in respect of other inputs or input services used in making zero rated supply of goods or services or both shall be granted. So this is a provision wherein if the supplier has taken the benefit of 48/2017, then in that case, he can be eligible or he is eligible for claiming the refund of the amount of input and input services which is used in making such zero rated supply of goods or services. Clause 4B, where the person claiming refund of unutilized input tax credit on account of zero rated supplies without payment of tax has A, received supplies on which the supplier has availed the benefit of notification number 40/2017, dated 23rd October 2017, published in the official gazette, or notification number 41/2017 of integrated tax, dated 23rd October 2017, or clause B, avail the benefit of notification 78/2017 of customs, dated 13th October 2017, and or notification number 79/2017, dated 13th October 2017, published in the Gazette, the refund of input tax credit availed in respect of inputs received under the said notification for export of goods. So these are certain notifications which deals with advance authorization or certain benefits which are being given to the importer, and then the conditions are laid down for the purpose of export. So if it is being exercised and adopted by the persons, then the refund of input tax credit which is availed in respect of inputs received under the said notification for export of goods and the input tax credit availed in respect of other input or input services to the extent used in making such export of goods shall be granted. So it's simple, and I don't think that there is much to read in this. Subrule 5. Now, we all are aware that this was challenged. Rule 89, Subrule 5 was challenged before the Honorable Gujarat High Court and Madras High Court. Honorable Gujarat High Court said that yes, it should include input services, and therefore the Gujarat High Court has declared this rule to be ultra vires to that extent. On the contrary, the Honorable Madras High Court has said no, this rule is in line with with section 54 subsection 3, and therefore it is not deholds the provisions of the Act, or it is not in contravention to the provisions of the law. Matter went to the Honorable Supreme Court on 13th September 2021, very recently, this month, only 2 weeks ago. The Honorable Supreme Court has decided and upheld the judgment of Honorable Madras High Court, and they have struck down or set aside the judgment of Honorable Gujarat High Court. What does this rule provide for? This rule is applicable in a case when you are seeking a refund of an amount of input tax credit which has accumulated on account of inverted duty structure, meaning thereby where the rate of inputs are higher than the rate of output, and therefore this rule says that this is the formula on which you will have to, or according to which you have to calculate. We argued before the court that the formula includes only inputs. The credit which is being accumulated on account of inputs, it is not allowing the refund of the credit which is being accumulated on account of input services, and therefore it is dehoves the provisions of section 54.3, because section 54.3 says any unutilized input tax credit. So how to interpret it? So now the Honorable Supreme Court has already interpreted and they have upheld Rule 89 sub Rule 5. And the formula is, in case of the refund of on account of inverted duty structure, the refund of input tax credit shall be granted as per the following formula. Maximum refund amount is equal
सर आपकी स्क्रीन बंद हो गई.
Okay, I'm sharing. Visible है ना?
हाँ सर.
Okay. Explanation: for the purpose of this sub rule, the expressions net ITC shall mean input tax credit availed on inputs during the relevant period other than the input tax credit availed for which input refund is claimed under sub rule 4A or 4B or both. So therefore, net ITC will include input tax credit which is availed on inputs. It does not include input services. Now it has been clarified by the Honorable Supreme Court. So जितना भी क्रेडिट आपका इनपुट से एक्यूमुलेट हो रहा है, केवल वही आपको रिफंड मिलेगा. इनपुट सर्विसेज से जो एक्यूमुलेट हो रहा है वो आपको रिफंड नहीं मिलेगा. और मेरी लिमिटेड अंडरस्टैंडिंग बोलती है कि आज कोई भी इंडस्ट्री में आप चले जाएं, वहां पे 40-50 या उससे भी हायर परसेंटेज सर्विसेज का होता है, ना कि इनपुट्स का. So anyways, that has been held by the Supreme Court, so nothing can be said and done about it. And clause B, adjusted total turnover and relevant period shall have the same meaning as assigned to them in sub rule 4. So sub rule 4 we have already read. I'm skipping these amendments and everything. Now moving to rule 90, which deals with the procedure that once you file an application for refund under rule 89, then what will be the procedure of acknowledgement and how it will move further. Sub rule 1, where the application relates to a claim for refund from the electronic cash ledger, an acknowledgement in form GST RFD 02 shall be made available to the applicant through the common portal electronically, clearly indicating the date of filing of the claim for refund and the time period specified in subsection 7 of section 54 shall be counted from such date of filing. That period of 90 days or whatsoever 60 days period is given in section 54.7, it will start from that date of filing. So RFD 01 is the acknowledgement which will be given, which will be reflected on the portal electronically once you make an application for refund from the electronic cash ledger. 2, the application for refund other than the claim for refund from electronic cash ledger shall be forwarded to the proper officer who shall, within a period of 15 days of filing of the said application, scrutinize the application for its completeness, and where the application is found to be complete in terms of sub rule 2, 3, 4 of rule 89, an acknowledgement in form RFD 02 shall be made available to the applicant through the common portal electronically, clearly indicating the date of filing of the claim for refund and the time period specified in subsection 7 of section 54 shall be counted from such date of filing. So what does it provide? So it says that the application, when it is not a case of electronic cash ledger refund, it will be forwarded to the proper officer, and within a period of 15 days, he will scrutinize the applications, and where the application is found to be complete, in terms of the sub rules 2, 3, 4 of Rule 89, acknowledgement will be generated and it will be made available on the common portal, which will clearly indicate the date of filing of the claim of refund and the time period will start from that particular day. Sub Rule 3 of Rule 90, it says where any deficiencies are noticed, the proper officer shall communicate the deficiency in form RFD 03 through the common portal electronically, requiring him to file a fresh refund application after the rectification of such deficiencies. This is certainly a reason of it being challenged. Because please appreciate, if a deficiency is there, you release a deficiency memo, I will resolve it. Why you want to make me or compel me to file a fresh application? And what will be the time barring of that fresh application? Let's see what does it provides for. Provided that the time period from the date of filing of refund claim in RFD 01 till the date of communication of deficiencies in RFD 03 by the proper person shall be excluded from the period of 2 years as specified in 54(1) in respect of any such fresh refund claim filed by the applicant after rectification of the deficiency. So therefore, they are giving you this relaxation also, that let's say you have filed on the last day of the expiry of 2 years. And then thereafter they are releasing a deficiency note to you. Now you are required to make a fresh application. Now 2 years have already expired. Whether you will be eligible to make the application, the answer is yes, because the proviso says that that period of the date of filing and the date of deficiency will be excluded. Now, please appreciate, if you have filed on the last date and that period of filing and the deficiency is excluded, then you will have only 1 day to file the application, because it is not giving a relaxation on the time barring. It is giving a relaxation on the date of filing. You can just read it. It says shall be excluded. What shall be excluded? The time period from the date of filing of refund till the date of communication of deficiency. Only that period. It is not 2 years that they have relaxed for you. It is only that period, date of filing till the date of deficiency informed to you. So if you have filed on the last date, only 1 day will be remaining to you for filing of the fresh application. Otherwise, on the very next day, it will become a time bar. So therefore, don't wait till the last moment. Subrule 4, where deficiency have been communicated in RFD 03, under the State Goods and Services Tax, the same shall also be deemed under this rule, along with the deficiencies communicated under Subrule 3. So it is obvious, because this is a dual GST. If one officer or one leg does something, then it is tantamounting to a situation that the other leg has also done it. The applicant may, at any time before issuance of provisional refund sanction order in RFD 04 or final refund sanction order in RFD 06 or payment order in RFD 05 or refund withhold order in RFD 07 or notice in RFD 08 in respect of any refund application in form RFD 01, withdraw the said application by filing an application in RFD 01W. So therefore, this is again a further opportunity. If let's say there is an error or you have claimed a refund which otherwise was not eligible, you can withdraw the refund application in RFD 01W. Subrule 6, on submission of an application for withdrawal of refund in RFD 01W, any amount debited by the applicant from the electronic credit ledger or electronic cash ledger, as the case may be, while filing application for refund in RFD 01 shall be credited back to the ledger from which such debit was made. So therefore, as soon as you will file an application for refund, the amount will be debited. So it will again be recredited once you file RFD 01W. Now, Rule 91, it deals with the grant of provisional refund. Subrule 1, the provisional refund in accordance with the provisions of subsection 6 of section 54, it is provided to an exporter, shall be granted subject to the condition that the person claiming refund has during any period of 5 years immediately preceding the tax period to which the refund claim relates, not been prosecuted for any offense under this act or under an existing law, where the amount of tax evaded exceeds 250 lakh rupees. 2.5 करोड़ से ज्यादा का इवेजन नहीं होना चाहिए और आपको प्रोसिक्यूशन नहीं फेस किया हुआ होना चाहिए, भले ही जीएसटी लॉ में और ना ही एग्जिस्टिंग लॉ में, दैट मीन्स द erstwhile law. Subrule 2. The proper officer, after scrutiny of the claim and the evidence submitted in support thereof, and on being prima facie satisfied that the amount claimed as refund under Subrule 1 is due to the applicant in accordance with the provisions of subsection 6 of section 54, shall make an order in RFD 04 sanctioning the amount of refund due to the said applicant on a provisional basis within a period of 7 days from the date of acknowledgement under Subrule 1 or Subrule 2 of Rule 90. Provided that the order issued in RFD 04 shall not be required to be revalidated by the proper officer. So RFD 01 can be issued within a period of 7 days, that is provisional refund order. Subrule 3, a proper officer shall issue a payment order in RFD 05 for the amount sanctioned under Subrule 2, and the same shall be electronically credited to any of the bank accounts of the applicant mentioned in his registration particulars and as specified in the application for refund on the basis of a consolidated payment advice. Provided that the payment order is in form RFD 05 shall be required to be revalidated where the refund has not been disbursed within the same financial year in which the said payment order was issued. So it clearly says that the payment order will be issued in RFD 05 of whatever amount is being sanctioned in Subrule 2 that as a provisional refund, and it will be electronically credited to the bank account which is given by the applicant mentioned in the registration particulars on the basis of a consolidated payment advice. It provides that the payment order which is issued in RFD 05, it shall be required to be revalidated where the refund has not been disbursed within the same financial year in which the said payment order was issued. If it is not disbursed, then it has to be revalidated. Otherwise, there is no requirement of any revalidation. Subrule 4, the central government shall disburse the refund based on the consolidated payment advice issued under Subrule 3. Moving further to rule number 92, which deals with the order sanctioning refund. Subrule 1. Where upon examination of an application, the proper officer is satisfied that a refund under subsection 5 of 54 is due and payable to the applicant, he shall make an order in RFD 06 sanctioning the amount of refund to which the amount is related, mentioning therein the amount, if any, refunded to him on a provisional basis under subsection 6 of section 54, amount adjusted against any outstanding demand under the Act or under any existing law, and the balance amount refundable. So this is how RFD 06 will be issued by the proper officer. He will specify the amount which was claimed and the amount of deduction, if any. Subrule 1A, whereupon examination of the application of refund of any amount paid as tax other than the refund of tax paid on zero-rated supply or deemed exports, the proper officer is satisfied that the refund under subsection 5 of section 54 of the Act is due and payable to the applicant, he shall make an order in RFD 06 sanctioning the amount of refund to be paid in cash proportionate to the amount debited in cash against the total amount paid for discharging tax liability for the relevant tax period. Mentioning therein the amount adjusted against any outstanding demand under the Act or under any other existing law, and the balance amount refundable and the remaining amount which has been debited from the electronic credit ledger for making payment of such tax, the proper officer shall issue PMT 03 recrediting the same said amount as input tax credit in the electronic credit ledger. So this is the process which will be adopted by the proper officer once he examines the refund application which is made by the taxpayer, wherein the amount which is paid at tax is not relating to the zero-rated supply or the deemed exports. Clause 2. Where the proper officer or the commissioner is of the opinion that the amount of refund is liable to be withheld under the provisions of subsection 10 or as the case may be subsection 11 of section 54, he shall pass an order in part A of the RFD 07 informing him the reasons for withholding such refund, provided that where the proper officer or the commissioner is satisfied the refund is no longer liable to be withheld, he may pass an order for release of withheld refund in part B of RFD 07. That means that 07 or of RFD part A deals with withholding and part B deals with the release of withheld amount of refund. Subrule 3. Where the proper officer is satisfied for the reasons to be recorded in writing that the whole or any part of the amount claimed as refund is not admissible or is not payable to the applicant, he shall issue a notice in RFD 08 to the applicant requiring him to furnish a reply in RFD 09 within a period of 15 days of the receipt of such notice, and after considering the reply, make an order in RFD 06 sanctioning the amount of refund in whole or part or rejecting the said refund claim, and said order shall be made available to the applicant electronically, and the provisions of subrule 1 shall mutatis mutandis apply to the extent of refund is allowed, provided that no application for refund shall be rejected without giving the applicant an opportunity of being heard. So this principle of natural justice, always and everywhere it has to be followed. And remember, this is the golden rule that whenever anything has to be decided against a person or the adverse decision is supposed to be taken, then the opportunity of being heard is mandatory. There are a number of precedences which have been defined and decided by the Honorable Supreme Court, wherein it is clearly laid down that the principles of natural justice is mandatorily to be followed by the tax officer. He cannot avoid following the principles of natural justice. Subrule 4, where the proper officer is satisfied that the amount refundable under subrule 1 or 1A or 2 is payable to the applicant under subsection 8 of section 54, he shall make an order in RFD 06 and issue a payment order in RFD 05 for the amount of refund, and the same shall be electronically credited to any of the bank accounts of the applicant mentioned in his registration particulars and as specified in the application for refund on the basis of consolidated payment advice, provided that order issued in RFD 06 shall not be required to be revalidated by the proper officer. It is not required to be revalidated, but the payment order in RFD 05 shall be required to be revalidated where the refund has not been dispersed within the same financial year in which the said payment order was issued. The central government shall disburse the refund based on the consolidated payment advice issued under subrule 4. Subrule 5, where the proper officer is satisfied that the amount refundable under subrule 1 or subrule 1A or subrule 2 is not payable to the applicant under subsection 8 of section 54, he shall make an order in form RFD 06 and issue a payment order in RFD 05 for an amount of refund to be credited in Consumer Welfare Fund. So if the officer is satisfied that whatever amount was refundable in subrule 1, 1A or 2, it is not payable to the applicant under section 54, subsection 8, then he will have to make an order in RFD 06 and a payment order has to be issued in RFD 05 and the amount has to be credited to the Consumer Welfare Fund and it will not be credited to the applicant's account. Moving further to Rule 93. It says credit of the amount of rejected claim. So whenever a claim is rejected, then the amount will have to be credited. Where any deficiencies have been communicated under Rule 90 subrule 3, the amount debited under subsection subrule 3 of Rule 89 shall be recredited to the electronic credit ledger. Now, subrule 2 is very important and it has its own dispute. Where any amount claimed as refunded is rejected under Rule 92, either fully or partially, the amount debited to the extent of rejection shall be recredited to the electronic credit ledger by an order made in RFD in GST form PMT 03. Now, explanation. For the purpose of this rule, a refund shall be deemed to be rejected if the appeal is finally rejected or if the claimant gives an undertaking in writing to the proper officer that he shall not file an appeal. Now, therefore, they are mandating all of us that once the order is of rejection comes, they say that this amount will not be credited to your electronic credit ledger unless you give an undertaking that you will not be filing an appeal. So this is something which is not in accordance of law, because law clearly says, section 54, it has a provision which clearly says that the amount, as soon as the refund application will be rejected, the amount will be recredited to your account. So therefore, this is, as per my understanding, this is not in accordance with law. Rule 94, order sanctioning interest on delayed payment, delayed refunds. Where any interest is due and payable to the applicant under section 56, the proper officer shall make an order along with the payment order in form RFD 05, specifying therein the amount of refund which is delayed, the period of delay for which interest is payable, and the amount of interest payable. And such amount of interest shall be electronically credited to any of the bank accounts of the applicant mentioned in the registration particulars and as specified in the application for refund. So this is how the interest also, which is due under section 56, will be issued by interest order. Refund of tax to certain persons. Any person eligible to claim refund of tax paid by him on his inward supplies as per notification issued under section 55 shall apply for refund in RFD 10 once in every quarter electronically on the common portal or otherwise, either directly or through a facilitation center notified by the commissioner, along with a statement of inward supplies of goods or services are both in GSTR 11. So this is how a person who is entitled to claim under section 55 will have to file RFD 10 either quarterly, electronically on the common portal or otherwise. 2. An acknowledgement for the receipt of application for refund shall be issued in RFD 02. 3. The refund of tax paid by the applicant shall be available if the inward supply of goods or services or both were received from a registered person against a tax invoice. Name and goods and services tax identification number or unique identity number of the applicant is mentioned in the tax invoice, and such other restrictions or conditions as may be specified in the notification are satisfied. So it will be leading to or the application will be processed subject to these conditions, that first he will have to purchase from the registered person. 2, on the tax invoice, his number of GSTN or the unique identity number should be specified, and the other conditions which are let down by way of a notification must be satisfied. The provisions of Rule 92 shall mutatis mutandis apply for the sanction and payment of the refund order under this rule. So Rule 92 will be applicable of rejection or acceptance of the refund application by the proper officer will be mutatis mutandis application applicable for this application also. Subrule 5, where an express provision in a treaty or other international agreement to which the President or Government of India is a party is inconsistent with the provisions of this chapter, such treaty or international agreement shall prevail. So this is an important provision which says when there is an express provision in a treaty or an international agreement to which either the President or the Government of India is a party, and that treaty is inconsistent with the provisions of this particular chapter of refund, then in that case, the treaty or the international agreement shall prevail, and the refunds or any other benefits shall be passed on in accordance with whatever is specified in the treaty and not in accordance with these rules or chapters. Rule 95, capital A. Refund of taxes to the retail outlets established in departure area of an international airport beyond immigration counters, making tax-free supply to an outgoing international tourist. So therefore, जो customs वाले जो आपके shops रहते हैं ड्यूटी फ्री इंटरनेशनल एयरपोर्ट्स पे, बट वो तो जब गुड्स खरीदते हैं तो उनको जीएसटी लगता है. सो फॉर देम द रिफंड इज अलाउएबल. सब रूल 1, retail outlet established in departure area of an international airport beyond the immigration counters, supplying indigenous goods to an outgoing international tourist who is living in India shall be eligible to claim refund of tax paid by it on inward supply of such goods. The retail outlet claiming refund of the taxes paid on his inward supplies shall furnish the application in RFC 10B on a monthly or a quarterly basis as the case may be, through the common portal directly or through a facilitation center notified by the commissioner. The self-certified compiled information of invoices issued for the supplies made during the month or quarter as the case may be, along with the concerned purchase invoice, shall be submitted along with the refund application. So it has to be self-certified and compiled properly. Subrule 4, the refund of tax paid by said retail outlet shall be available if the inward supply of goods were received by the said outlet from a registered person against a tax invoice. The said goods were received by the said outlet to an were supplied to the by the said outlet to an outgoing international tourist against foreign exchange without charging any tax. Name and GST number of the retail outlet is mentioned in the tax invoice for the inward supplies, and such other restrictions or conditions as may be specified are satisfied. Subrule 5, the provisions of Rule 92 shall mutatis apply for the sanction and payment of refund under this rule. Explanation. For the purpose of this rule, the expression outgoing international tourist shall mean a person not normally resident in India. It is not you or me. It is a person who is not normally resident in India, who enters in India for a stay of not more than 6 months for legitimate non-immigrant purposes. So therefore, it is not a case when such stores or retail outlets are supplying goods to you or me when we are going out of India for a few days and coming back. It is applicable to outgoing international tourists. That means a person who is not ordinarily resident, who is not residing in India, but he is visiting India on a legitimate basis for a period not more than 6 months. So that needs to be kept in mind before claiming the amount of refund. Okay, now moving to Rule 96. Refund of integrated tax paid on goods or services exported out of India. In 89 Subrule 4, we have read the refund which is allowable, but in that case, it was refund allowable in case when the goods are exported or the services are exported under LUT, that is without payment of tax. But Rule 96 deals with a situation wherein the goods are exported with payment of tax. The shipping bill filed by an exporter shall be deemed to be an application for refund. So therefore, this is a situation wherein the application is not to be filed. Otherwise, in all cases, the application for refund has to be filed either in form RFD1 or in form GSTR4 or some other appropriate form. On the basis of the refund application being made and it being processed by the proper officer, the refund can be claimed. But it is only a situation where you are exporting with payment of IGST that you are not supposed to file an application, and therefore the shipping bill filed by an exporter of goods shall be deemed to be an application for refund of integrated tax paid on the goods exported out of India, and such application shall be deemed to have been filed only when the person in charge of the conveyance carrying the export goods duly files a departure manifest or an export manifest or an export report covering the number and the date of shipping bills or the bills of export, and the applicant has furnished a valid return in form GSTR3 or GSTR3B as the case may be. Subrule 2. The details of the relevant export invoices in respect of export of goods contained in GSTR1 shall be transmitted electronically by the common portal to the system designed by the custom. So GSTR1 common portal से वो automatically ICE gate पे transmit होगा. Automatically, it is not manual, it is system dependent. And the said system shall electronically transmit to the common portal a confirmation that the goods covered by the said invoices have been exported out of India. Provided that where the date for furnishing the details of outward supplies in GSTR 1 for a tax period has been extended in exercise of powers conferred under section 37 of the Act, the supplier shall furnish the information relating to exports as specified in Table 6, capital A of GSTR 1 after the return in GSTR 3B has been furnished, and the same shall be transmitted electronically by the common portal to the system designed by the customs. So automatically it will be transmitted to the IceGate system. Provided further that the information in Table 6, capital A furnished under the first proviso shall be auto-drafted in form GSTR 1 for the same tax period. Upon the receipt of the information regarding the furnishing of a valid return in GSTR 3 or GSTR 3B, as the case may be from the common portal, the system designed by customs or the proper officer of customs, as the case may be, shall process the claim for refund in respect of the export of goods and an amount equal to the integrated tax paid in respect of each shipping bill or the bill of export shall be electronically credited to the bank account of the applicant mentioned in his registration particulars and as estimated intimated to the customs authority. So it is now making it very clear that you are not supposed to make any separate application for claiming refund of IGST paid for exporting the goods. It is by way of electronically and automatically matching of the common portal and the IceGate and the transmitting of the invoices therein that the refund will be processed and the amount will be credited to your bank account, which you have shown in the while getting yourself registered. The claim for refund shall be withheld where a request has been received from the jurisdictional commissioner of central tax, state tax, or union territory tax to withhold the payment of refund due to the person claiming refund in accordance with the provisions of subsection 10 or subsection 11 of section 54, or the proper officer of the customs determines the goods were exported in violation of the provisions of Customs Act 1962. In these two situations, the refund can be withheld. Barring these two, the refund cannot be withheld by the authorities. Now, we all have read multiple case laws also, Amit Cotton Industries and the like cases wherein the refund was withheld by the officers. They said that you have exported the goods and you have claimed higher duty drawback during July, August, and September 2017 when there was no clarity. In Amit Cotton Industries, the Honorable Gujarat High Court has let down, then Precourt Meridian, and then there are various cases wherein the Honorable Courts have let down that no, the refund is allowed to be withheld only in these particular situations. Barring these situations, the refund cannot be withheld in the GST era, and therefore the refund has to be given. Subrule 5, where refund is withheld in accordance with the provisions of clause A of Subrule 4, the proper officer of the integrated tax at customs station shall intimate the applicant and the jurisdictional commissioner of central tax, state tax, or union territory tax, as the case may be, and a copy of such intimation shall be transmitted to the common portal. So that is an intimation within which the refund will be withheld. Upon transmission of the intimation under Subrule 5, the proper officer of the central tax or state tax or union territory tax, as the case may be, shall pass an order in RFD 07 Part A, that is withholding, and when it will be released, it will be Part B, where the applicant becomes entitled to refund of the amount withheld under Clause A of Subrule 4. The concerned jurisdictional officer of central tax, state tax, or union territory tax, as the case may be, shall proceed to refund the amount by passing an order in RFD 06 after passing an order for release of withheld refund in RFD 07 in Part B. Subrule 8. The central government may pay refund of the integrated tax to the government of Bhutan on the export to Bhutan for such classes of goods as may be notified in this behalf, and where such refund is paid to the government of Bhutan, the exporter shall not be paid any refund of integrated tax. Now, this is something which is again to be considered, that the central government can refund the integrated tax to the government of Bhutan of certain specified class of goods, which will be notified or which shall be or which has to be notified by the government. And if you are exporting those goods, then you will not be eligible to claim the refund of the IGST paid. It will be given to the government of Bhutan. Sub-rule 9, the application for refund of integrated tax on the services exported out of India shall be filed in RFD 01 and shall be dealt with in accordance with the provisions of Rule 89. And sub-rule 10, which is again challenged before the various courts, the DRA has issued notices and then the cases are transferred to the local jurisdiction, and now various summons are being issued to the tax authority, to the taxpayers, that if you have availed the benefit of advance authorization, then you cannot export with payment of tax and claim refund thereof. You will have to export mandatorily without payment of tax and duty. So this is sub-rule 10. The persons claiming refund of integrated tax on export of goods or services should not have received supplies on which benefit of government as per notification number 48/2017 dating to 18th October 2017, except so far as it relates to receipt of capital goods by person against export promotion capital goods scheme, that is EPCG, or notification number 40/2017 has been availed, or avail the benefit of notification number 78/2017 or 79/2017 of customs, except so far as it relates to the capital goods by such person against the EPCG scheme. So therefore, EPCG scheme imports are allowed, barring that or beyond that, it is not allowed. Explanation: for the purpose of this rule, the benefit of notification mentioned therein shall not be considered to have been availed only where the registered person has paid integrated goods and services tax and compensation cess on inputs and has availed exemption of only basic customs duty under the said notification. When you have paid it, then this restriction will not be applicable. But if you have not paid, then in that case, this restriction will be applicable, that you cannot make an application under this rule if you have received these supplies and claim the benefits which are provided as per these notifications. Moving to the other rule, which is Rule 96 capital A. Now, this is applicable in case of export of goods or services under the bond or letter of undertaking. Again, it is the more or less, most of the provisions are same. So, okay, let's do it. Otherwise, I was willing to leave this, but no problem. Let's do it. Rule 96 capital A. Export of goods or services under bond or letter of undertaking. 1. Any registered person availing the option to supply goods or services for export without payment of integrated tax shall furnish, prior to export, a bond or letter of undertaking in RFD 11 to the jurisdictional commissioner, binding himself to pay the tax along with interest is specified under subsection 1 of section 50 within a period of 15 days after the expiry of 3 months or such period as may be allowed by the commissioner from the date of issue of the invoice for export if the goods are not exported out of India, or 15 days after the expiry of 1 year or such further period as may be allowed by the commissioner from the date of issuance of the invoice for export if the payment of such services is not received by the exporter in convertible foreign exchange or in Indian rupees wherever permitted by RBI. 2. The details of export invoices contained in GSTR 1 furnished on the common portal shall electronically transmit to the system designed by the customs, and a confirmation that the goods covered by the said invoices have been exported out of India shall be electronically transmitted to the common portal from the said system. Provided that where the date for furnishing the details of outward supply in GSTR 1 has been extended in exercise of the power under section 37, the supplier shall furnish the information relating to exports as specified in table 6A of GSTR 1 after the return in GSTR 3B has been furnished, and the same shall be transmitted electronically by the common portal to the system designed by the customs. Provided further that the information in table 6A furnished under the first proviso shall be auto-drafted in GSTR 1 for the said tax period. So this is how it is more or less similar to what we have read in Rule 96. Sub-Rule 3, where the goods are not exported within a time specified in Sub-Rule 1 and the registered person fails to pay the amount mentioned in the sub-rule, the export as allowed under bond or letter of undertaking shall be withdrawn forthwith, and the said amount shall be recovered from the registered person in accordance with the provisions of Section 79, which deals with recovery of tax. 4. The export as allowed under bond or letter of undertaking withdrawn in terms of Sub-Rule 3 shall be restored immediately when the registered person pays the amount due. So whenever an export is allowed under the letter of undertaking or a bond, it will be withdrawn in terms of Sub-Rule 3, and it is withdrawn in Sub-Rule 3, then it will be restored immediately when the registered person pays the amount. The board may, by way of notification, may specify the conditions and safeguards under which a letter of undertaking may be furnished in place of a bond. The provisions of Sub-Rule 1 shall apply mutatis mutandis in respect of zero-rated supply of goods or services or both to an SEZ unit or an SEZ developer without payment of tax. Then comes the newly inserted law, which is Rule 96B, which has been challenged before the Honorable Gujarat High Court in one of the cases, and the notice has been issued to the government. This rule, again, now they have amended the law to make this rule relevant. But I think for the period between the issuance of this rule and the law being made effective, for that period, this rule may be declared ultra vires. Recovery of refund of unutilized input tax credit or integrated tax paid on export of goods where export proceeds not realized. So they are putting a restriction that if you are not realizing the export receipts within a period which is specified under FEMA, then in that case, the refund which is given to you shall be recovered along with interest. Where any amount of unutilized input tax credit on account of export of goods or of integrated tax paid on export of goods has been paid to an applicant, but the sale proceeds in respect of such export have not been realized in full or in part in India within the period allowed under FEMA, including any extension of such period, the person to whom the refund has been made shall deposit the amount so refunded to the extent of non-realization of sale proceeds, along with the applicable interest within period of 30 days of the expiry of the set period, or as the case may be, the extended period, failing which the amount refunded shall be recovered in accordance with the provisions of Section 73 or 74 of the Act, as the case may be, as is applicable for the recovery of erroneous refund along with interest under Section 50. So therefore, they say that if there is a time limit which is provided in FEMA, if within that time limit you are not receiving the export proceeds, then in that case, the amount of refund which is given to you will be refunded, will be recovered from you as an erroneous refund along with interest under Section 50. Provided that where sale proceeds or any part thereof in respect of such export goods are not realized by the applicant within period allowed under FEMA, but the Reserve Bank of India writes of the requirement of realization of sale proceeds on merits, the refund paid to the applicant shall not be recovered. So it will not be recovered in that case. Sub-Rule 2, where the sale proceeds are realized by the applicant in full or part after the amount refunded has been recovered from him, and the applicant produces evidence about the realization within a period of 3 months from the date of realization of sale proceeds, the amount so recovered shall be refunded by the proper officer to the applicant to the extent of realization of sale proceeds, provided the sale proceeds have been realized within such extended period as permitted by the RBI. So if it is received at a later point in time, then in that case, the amount which was recovered will be refunded back to the taxpayer or the exporter. Then it comes to Rule 97. For the time being, I'm skipping Rule 97. In the next session, we'll try to cover this Rule 97 because it deals with Consumer Welfare Fund. It may not be so much relevant for us, but yes, for our understanding, we must read it. So therefore, I'm not skipping it. I'll be dealing with this in next session. But please bear in mind, Rule 89 to Rule 96 are very, very important, and we must be aware about not only the provisions of section 54 read with section 16, but we must also be aware of all these rules which lays down the practical procedures and the restrictions, if any, in case of the applications or the sanctioning of the refunds. With this, I would like to end today's session, wherein we have tried to cover, and rather we have covered Rule 89 to Rule 96B. Only Rule 97 is pending, and I don't intend to cover that. But yes, I will certainly cover the important aspects of that, important parts of that, so that we are aware at least what Rule 97 provides for with regards to the Consumer Welfare Fund. With this, I would like to thank each one of you for giving me this opportunity of reading the law together, reading the rules together, and try to learn together. Now, in next week, we'll try to move further and deal with the chapters which are pertaining to the payments and further rules. Shalin, are there any questions? और we can take
बहुत सारे क्वेश्चन है, बट टाइम थोड़ा लिमिटेड है. ऐसा हो तो नेक्स्ट सेशन की स्टार्टिंग में अपने ये सारे क्वेश्चन ले लेते हैं.
Okay, fine. So you can note down the questions and we'll take it in the next session, at the start of the next session.
Yes, sir.
Fine. So once again, thank you to each one of you for the opportunity given of learning together. Thank you. Thank you very much.